Hi guys, welcome back. I want to thank you all so much for taking an interest in the exercise stuff that I've been doing, and with that in mind I'm going to do another one of those today. I've had loads of questions about supplements, what people should take, what they shouldn't. As you know, if you've watched the other videos, I'm not a guy in the industry, I'm just a normal guy that exercises in his middle age and trying to get into good shape. I'm not getting any payments or any sort of supplement sponsorships. I don't do personal training, I don't work in the industry. So I think that's what attracted people to the last videos, that I'm giving quite an honest sort of perspective on what's good and what's not, and what works and what doesn't. I've used loads of supplements over the years. If you didn't watch the last videos, go back and have a look. You'll find them in the lifestyle part of the blog. But I've basically gone from being a pretty serious power lifter to very, very out of shape, and then getting back into shape now. So obviously when I was powerlifting and in gyms all the time, I used lots of different supplements. And when I was a younger guy especially, you know, supplements were really, really interesting to me, like a lot of young guys and young women now as well. There tend to be lots of females that are looking at the supplement market, whereas it used to be predominantly a male orientated thing. We were really into all kinds of things back then, lots of post workouts and pre-workouts and during workouts, and as I got older I started to realise, hey, you know, some of these didn't work at all and some of them were a straight up con. We're going to talk about some of that, you know, how to ascertain if a supplement works, what I've found that works, what medical science has found that works, which is a whole different ball game again. And then just a quick mention about how you go about that. You know, science basically dictates something will work if there's loads and loads of studies all pointing to it having a significant effect on the participants that took place in those studies. You know, and those studies are unbiased, they're not sponsored by the supplement companies themselves, they're not studies of 10 people paid for by a supplement company, and then, you know, a supplement company might conduct like 20 of its own studies, and it finds that in 2 of the studies the results look quite good, so it will publish those and then bury the rest. You know, that is not scientific, that is just marketing, and you've got to be very careful not to get led by the nose by these people and buy into that kind of thing. So it pays. You can go online, you can check out, you know, different PubMeds, which are published medical scientific studies that cover all these kind of supplements. You can usually find stuff on those, so it's definitely worth digging into that. I've done a bit of that for this video, so hopefully I can save you guys some trouble. But I did have a lot of questions about, you know, what I use, what I recommend. So we can break the supplement market down into sort of some categories, and I'll go through those categories and we'll go through the supplements in them. So I'm guessing the first category would be pre-workout. So that's supplements that you're supposed to take before you go to the gym, that generally are supposed to get you in the mood for the gym. Some of them advertise that they increase your pump and muscle size while you're working out, you know, get you hyped, and some of them work and there's reasons why they work. So back in the day we used to take a lot of those supplements and most of them had ephedrine in them. Now ephedrine is a drug now, you know, that you can't get in supplements anymore, certainly not legitimate supplements, and it's very much like amphetamine. So there was a good reason why that stuff worked real well. Loads of people didn't even realise what they were taking, so they were taking like these things called Agent Orange and all these cool sounding supplements, and you know, everyone was hyped in the gym and like talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and that was because, you know, they were all ephedrined out of their heads. Generally the supplement companies stack that with caffeine and then also an aspirin, which prolonged the effect of this concoction. And there was no doubt that worked. And like a lot of supplements, you know, when something comes onto the market and it starts working, generally the government and various other organisations start taking note. there generally is side effects, because if something works very well, it generally has side effects in a percentage of the population as well. And sure enough, ephedrine did that. It worked really well. Some people actually had very adverse side effects. A very few people died from it, you know, serious business, people with pre-existing heart conditions and stuff. And that actually got taken off the market because of that, and became, you know, available as a prescription drug, but certainly not in most countries available as something you can just randomly take. It was also used by people to produce methamphetamine, so that would be another reason why it was taken off the list of things that you can supplement for the gym. So after that, a load of different analogues of ephedrine were released by supplement companies that they're basically playing a cat and mouse game, a bit like the recreational drug, sort of, you know, all the different drugs that came out of rec drugs that were kind of legal, like legal highs. It was just underground chemists were messing around with these formulas until they got something that behaved in a similar way and was a slightly altered version of that substance. So you had loads of different versions of ephedrine coming out, and still to this day you get that. So if you go into the kind of really hardcore end of pre-workout supplements, you'll find substances like, I think it's DMHA, various other, they often call them natural sounding names, but when you actually explore into the background of these names, it tends to be various different variations of ephedrine or of some sort of amphetamine type substance, which the problem with that is a lot of that's untested. So at least with ephedrine, you know, there was years of data on how that affected people, but with these new concoctions, no one really knows, you know, if it's any good for you or not, what the long-term effects are. So that's probably something I would steer clear away from if you're really concerned about your longevity, which is actually my main concern and why I'm doing a lot of this exercise. So then we get to, you know, the sort of less hardcore supplements, and mainly they contain caffeine. So caffeine is something that's been widely studied. It's been shown to be incredibly safe. Most of us have it in coffee and tea. In the supplement range, you know, the caffeine dose is a lot higher. So we've got a supplement here that's very cheap on the pre-workout. I bought it just because it's got caffeine in it, and I wanted to have caffeine as a pre-workout sometimes, and that actually contains per serving 300 milligrams of caffeine, which is maybe the equivalent of 2 very strong coffees. Now you've got to be careful with caffeine because a lethal dose can be as little as 10 grams. So when you see videos of people, you know, getting this kind of stuff and chugging it and taking way past the recommended dose, they could well be getting into territory that's pretty dangerous. So I wouldn't recommend that. And loads of caffeine makes you feel really ill. It makes your heart feel like it's having palpitations, and to be honest, it's not something you would feel like you wanted to go and exercise on. Medical studies backing caffeine are numerous. It definitely increases people's energy, and there is a payback for that if you take a large portion of caffeine, you end up having a crash later on in the day. You know, like anything, that's the side effect generally of caffeine. Some people are more sensitive to it than others, so obviously be careful how much you dose before you go to the gym. It might be sensible just to have like a really strong cup of coffee or something, see how you get on with that, and then try something for you know, a supplement. And you could just have 1 or 2 coffees, you know, that would be a cheap way of getting your caffeine supplementation. The medical studies backing the oxidation of fats with caffeine are pretty thorough. They're generally supportive of that happening. So if you're trying to lose body fat and you're going to the gym, then having a dose of caffeine before you leave seems to have pretty good scientific backing that works. So the dosages used in those studies were generally about 3 milligrams or just over, between 3 and 4 milligrams per kilo of body weight. So if I'm a 90 kilo person, I would do 90 times 3, so we can do that on a calculator. 90 times 3 milligrams. So that's 270 milligrams. So this dose here of 300 milligrams would be enough to give me a decent level of this fat burning effect that they're talking about. And that's one of the things that's important. If you're taking a supplement, have a look at the medical studies and work out how much of the stuff that they were taking, because in a lot of those studies, you know, a company will say that there's an effective dose and it's really good and you take this supplement, but the dose that they're offering in that supplement is way lower than what the studies show. So another sly thing these supplement guys will do is talk about a proprietary blend. So that's even worse, because you think, oh, well, that sounds cool. You know, they're giving me a proprietary blend. They've really gone out of their way to get that together. Well, what does that actually mean? Well, what that means is that they don't have to list the amounts of that on the label. They just list the substances themselves. So a proprietary blend in like a pre-workout, they would just give you the names of a load of different things which sound, wow, that's got loads of good stuff in it. And then they don't tell you how much. So there could be like a pinprick of this and a tiny 0.00 milligrams of this, and as long as it contains some of it, they kind of get away with that. The problem with that is you can never ascertain if you're actually taking a working dose of that. So for caffeine, if I wanted 300 milligrams and they included caffeine in the proprietary blend on here, I would never know if I was actually getting 300 milligrams. The other issue could be that they've absolutely stacked it out with caffeine and you're getting like a gram of caffeine and it makes you feel really ill, and it could be dangerous. And you know, you would never know that, because you would have to take it first to know what you were actually getting, and you would have to discern from how you felt whether it was suitable or not. So avoid proprietary blends. They only do that to save themselves money. They're not putting a proprietary blend in there to benefit you. They're doing that so that they can really scrimp and scrape on all the expensive parts of the supplement and basically put tiny minuscule amounts of that in. There's no benefit to you when they put that on the label. So the other things that you tend to find in these pre-workouts is something called beta-alanine, and that gives you a tingle. So one of the reasons they put that stuff in these pre-workouts is because it does actually give you a tingly skin feeling, and people equate that to the thing working. You know, wow, this stuff's really working, it's really strong. But that isn't really doing anything for you, and I actually find that pretty uncomfortable. I don't like that feeling, but some people do. You know, they equate it to the substance being good. Beta-alanine, beta-alanine has been shown in some studies to have a benefit to people doing really extended high intensity workouts, and we're talking, you know, quite a small percentage benefit to those people to be able to keep up that level of intensity. For things like weight training, where we're training really hard and then we're having a break and then we're training really hard, it isn't really suited to that kind of thing. It's more if you were you know, doing like an Ironman or something like that, it might have some very small benefit to you. And there are some studies that basically say it had no benefit to any athletes whatsoever. So there's conflicting studies on that, and the studies that are out there certainly don't support its use in the sort of weightlifting gym or any amateur level cardio. If you were maybe an Olympic level cyclist or something, it would be worth considering that. There's loads of other stuff that goes into pre-workouts. Most of it has some sort of stimulant value to it. There isn't really anything out there that's medically proven that isn't kind of a bit dark side stimulant, you know, like I said before, going towards that almost ephedrine like substance or whatever. Most of it's based around caffeine and various different names for caffeine. So they'll call it you know, like things like green coffee bean extract or something like that. It's all just a flashy sounding name for the same thing. A lot of them contain ginseng as well. That's something, it sounds, you know, really cool and Eastern, and it might be full of mysterious promise, but there's pretty much no studies that show the effect of ginseng. That's one of those that has a lot of anecdotal backing with it. So anecdotal meaning that a lot of people say that it helped them. And this is one of the important things to note with supplements, is that we know scientifically that there isn't actually a huge effect from, you know, people thinking that they're on something that's going to help them. And that really has a real world effect. They call it the placebo effect. So if you give someone some white inert tablets and tell them, you're dressed as a doctor, and you tell them that this is going to make them exercise really well, and they've got belief that you are a doctor and that you are telling the truth, the probability is that they're going to have a really good, you know, exercise in that gym. They're going to feel really strong. They might break some of their personal records. And the reality is that those tablets were completely inert, and there was no reason, you know, in terms of chemical reactions or hormonal reactions for them to actually have a good workout. It was to do with the psychology of it. So a lot of these supplement companies rely on that placebo effect. So they'll put things in like ginseng that have a lot of anecdotal evidence backing them up, but you'll probably find most of that anecdotal evidence is people that have taken a substance, they feel that it's going to make them behave a certain way, so they feel that it, you know, it did, because it actually did, you know, it did make them feel that way, but it wasn't because of the substance itself, it was because of their self-belief in what the substance was making them do. So interesting as well that, you know, you're unlocking some of your potential with the placebo effect, that most of us aren't tapping into our full potential in the gym, and it takes us to fool ourselves psychologically to actually put a bit more effort in. That's a shame. You know, we should be, like I said in my workout video, put the exercise in, you know, put the intensity into the exercise, and you can do a lot more than you think you can. So exercise to failure, because if you exercise to failure, you know you've done it with full intensity. So pre-workouts often contain creatine, and that's one of the comments that's come up a few times. People have said, do you use creatine? What do you think about creatine? Creatine is something that I had always assumed was, you know, it's guaranteed, it works, you know, because it's one of those that people talk about. There's lots of studies behind it. There has been loads of studies conducted on creatine, but there are quite a lot of studies that show that it had some benefit, and quite a lot of studies that showed it had no benefit at all. The other thing to note with creatine is the dosing in these studies is probably a lot more than most people are used to or have ever taken. So most of the studies where it worked well, they had a loading phase, which generally was around a week, and they were taking between 20 and 30 and upwards grams a day of creatine. Now, based on the fact most supplement companies dose at between 1 and 5 grams, so let's have a look at this, because I believe this contains some creatine. So this has got 2,560 milligrams, so like 2.6 grams, let's call it, of creatine. So there's no way I would be getting anywhere near that loading dose in this. And actually, after they've come off the loading dose in some of these studies, they were generally taking about 5 grams or more of creatine a day. So again, way more than that's in here. That's double the dose of in here. So if I doubled up on this one to get what would in some studies be a working dose of creatine, I would actually be getting about 600 milligrams of caffeine, and that's probably way too much. You know, that would make me feel pretty rubbish in the gym. So you've got to be careful with these pre-blended ones. You know, I'm not taking this costs like £9 in a sale somewhere. I just want the caffeine out of it. I can add creatine to that, so if I want to add an extra couple of grams of creatine, I can just buy some creatine and add it to this. This was just a cheap way to get some caffeine in. But that's why I'm not a big fan of these blended pre-workouts, because you're kind of stuck a lot of the time with the dose and you look down the list of all the supplements that are in there, and you're kind of stuck with the dosages. You can't really take more, because then you're taking more of the stimulant, and that's probably going to make you feel pretty rubbish, and they're generally underdosed. So if you're going to take creatine, I would be looking at what is talked about in these studies, and have that loading phase of 20 to 25 grams a day for the first week, and then you're looking at 5 grams a day after that, and that's a considerable amount of creatine, so it's going to cost you a little bit of money. And some people are not going to tolerate it, because some people find that it upsets their stomach. Creatine, in the studies where it worked, it was shown to increase strength and increase muscle hypertrophy in the two groups. You'd have a group that didn't take any, you'd sometimes have a group that thought they were taking some but weren't, and then a group that actually were taking some, and they would make comparisons between the groups. The results in some of these studies were what they call statistically significant, but that didn't mean to say it was huge results. You didn't have one group that put on like 50% more muscle than the other. We're talking quite small amounts of muscle growth in creatine. The bottom line is, there are things that make your muscles grow a lot quicker, and those things quickly got banned from the gym world. There's anabolic steroids, there's various performance enhancing drugs, there's now something that's concerningly popular called SARMs. SARMs are, again, chemists have got hold of steroids, slightly altered them, made these new compounds out of them, and then used a loophole in the laws of some countries to release them as research chemicals, and they can sell them with a label on that says not for human consumption. And these SARMs are becoming very, very popular because you can buy them on the internet. People automatically assume, well, they're not banned, they must be really safe, and they get good results. And they will get good results, because a lot of them are basically steroidal type compounds, but the difference being they've had no real long-term testing, so you don't actually know how much damage they're doing to your liver, kidneys. Most of them are oral, so if you're taking tablets by the mouth, that's all going through your liver and being processed by that, and if the liver doesn't cope with those well, you'll know about it when you've got jaundice and liver disease and you're in hospital, and then you won't be training for a long time. The other problem is young males are taking these things thinking they're utterly safe, and they could actually end up not being able to have children when they're older, which they may say they don't care about when they're 17, 18, but when they meet the girl of their dreams in 10 years time, and she wants to have a baby, and she's going to leave them if they can't provide one, then they're probably going to care quite a lot about that. So I would certainly say creatine is worth taking. It's something I have taken in the past. It's hard to say if I got any really noticeable gains out of it, but I think it may have helped me achieve some powerlifting, personal records kind of thing. And we're only talking like going a couple of kilos over my personal best. It didn't put 30 kilos on my bench or anything like that, because if you're doing quite well, these supplements are just giving you a really tiny edge. They're not going to make up for, they're not going to you can't bench anything and then you take creatine and suddenly you can lift 100 kilos. It doesn't work like that. You need to get the basic development of strength and muscle tone in your body, and then you might see some small benefit from some of these supplements. Glutamine is another supplement that's sometimes added to pre-workout, and often just added at random for gym goers. It is supposed to help people recover, help muscles recover. What they actually found was it's great for people who are suffering severely in hospital, that are like severely malnourished and have muscle wasting diseases and have medical reasons why they would need extra glutamine in the body. The studies which looked at people using glutamine in, for gyms and in sports use, they didn't really show any benefit to normal people at all, and that's generally because most of us have diets and bodies that are have got plenty of glutamine in, and if you add more, everyone thinks with supplements, well, that's good for you, so adding more must be great, but the body doesn't work like that. When you add more of something, it generally just excretes it, and sometimes it gets rid of it and it's causing the body stress by having to excrete it as well. So more of something isn't always good. Vitamins are a prime example. If you just keep loading and loading like more and more vitamins, you can end up doing damage to your liver and kidneys, because your body's just trying desperately to get rid of them because there's too many in it can't process all that. So then we get to post-workout. So post-workout is where things for me get a bit more interesting, because we've actually got some positive information. So then during workout, there's a lot of products that, some of these are in pre-workout as well, but you get these drinks that you're supposed to have during workout, and most of them are based around sort of pump-based products. And when I say pump, I mean like a muscle pump. So they're generally espousing some sort of vasodilation, which is your blood vessels basically enlarging and allowing more blood flow to go through, and that's supposed to be taking more nutrients to the muscle. They refer to that as a pump. So generally speaking, there's some amino acids that are used in these things that people talk about, so like arginine, citrulline, malate, stuff like that. There are very, very few studies that show them having any positive benefit for weightlifters, and there's a whole ton of studies that show that they have no benefit at all, and that's at all kind of dosage ranges. I've used quite a lot of those pump products. They didn't really do anything for me. And one of the interesting things in the pre-workout, if you've got arginine and citrulline, malate and stuff in your pre-workout, so that you take them for vasodilation to make your blood vessels open up, but that's also got stimulants in, like caffeine, and sometimes these even stronger stimulants like I mentioned, and those stimulants are vasoconstrictors and they shrink the vessels back down again. So the stimulants are way stronger. They will always win in that battle of vasodilation versus vasoconstriction. So almost it's like a self-cancelling product, and I think they just stick those pump products in there for a bit of sales hype, because there's no way that you would get vasodilation when you're loading yourself with a whole bucket load of stimulants on top of it. It's just not going to happen. And that's one of the reasons, if you take too much caffeine, males might see certain bits of their anatomy getting smaller, and certainly that happens if you take like the old ephedrine products and stuff. So warning, guys, if you're trying to impress people, don't take those really hardcore stim products, because things don't work properly down below, and that's not a good thing. So then we have post-workout, which is actually where stuff starts getting a bit more interesting, because we actually have some things that work. They're not, funny enough, they're not the most exciting supplements in the world, but they do have really good scientific studies behind them. So one of which is protein. Now, interesting that protein is often discussed as a post-workout drink. There's actually very little evidence that protein post-workout is of great benefit. Protein, there's loads of evidence that getting the right amount of protein throughout the day, or meeting a minimum amount of protein or more throughout the day, is definitely aids muscle growth. There's no question about that. There's numerous studies that show that. And doing it after workout is, I think protein drinks after workout are good, because number one, they're a way of adding to your daily protein intake. Number two, it's a way of quickly consuming some protein after you've done quite a long piece of exercise, and it's not generally a time where you would feel like eating protein. You don't finish at the gym after a really hard workout and think, oh, I could murder a tuna sandwich. It generally takes you half an hour or so to actually feel like you want to eat if you trained really hard. And protein intake, a lot of the studies that talk about protein supporting muscle growth, you're talking 2 to 3 milligrams per kilo body weight. So again, like for me, 90 kilos, we're looking at 180 to 270 grams of protein a day. The meta study on whey protein, looking at supplementing with that, and looked at, I think, over 300,000 there was a meta study looking at over 300,000 other studies, all to do with protein supplementation, and they all supported having a good amount of protein in your daily diet, and certainly whey protein could be a part of that. It was a very useful way to supplement that protein intake. But the actual fact of having it directly after workout itself doesn't have any benefit over and above having that protein at any other time of day. But like I said, it's a good way to ingest the protein then. It also tastes really nice, so it kind of ties into this other thing which definitely is good to do post-workout, and that is to consume carbohydrates. So carbs have a really, really good amount of study on them, especially when taken after workout, and an intake of between 0.7 grams and 1 gram of carbs per kilo of body weight generally shows that you can fight off catabolism after workout. So where your body is absolutely exhausted and it's wanting to break tissue down, you can slow that process, maybe not completely stop it, but certainly slow it down considerably and help gain more lean muscle mass by slowing that process down by giving yourself this supplement of protein. But that's quite a considerable amount of protein. So for me, that would be anywhere from between like 50 grams of protein up to 50 grams of carbohydrates up to about 90 odd grams of carbohydrates. Now, it doesn't actually matter too much what kind of carbohydrates you intake at that point. A lot of people back in the day would use simple sugar, and they would literally have like 80-90 grams of sugar in their whey protein. I found that pretty gross because it's super sweet, and I'm not comfortable about ingesting that amount of sugar at that point. So I used to go for powdered oats. I still use powdered oats sometimes. What I generally use is cream of rice. And again, it doesn't matter what company you buy from. I just happened to get a deal on this one, XL Nutrition. It was excellent price on Amazon. If it's still a good price, I'll stick a link up. But yes, before anyone asks, I do get a tiny kickback off those links. In the last 2 months, I think I've made 56p out of them, so that might pay for maybe my lighting in this video, but yeah, I'm certainly not getting any big bucks from supplement companies for this stuff. It doesn't even cover it. It goes nowhere near to covering the cost of making videos and editing them and stuff. I like that stuff because it's got a flavour, it's easy to drink, and it mixes well. You don't, it's not all stuck at the bottom of the mixer and loads of sediment and all that kind of thing. It's just a really easy thing to drink, and it's not overly sweet. You can get a plain version. If you're in the States, cream of rice is like a really stock item in supermarkets, so you don't even have to buy like a bodybuilding version of it. You can just go to a supermarket and buy it like we buy porridge oats over here. It just doesn't seem like a popular breakfast item here, but it is in the States. And either that or I have the powdered oats. The powdered oats, I've actually got a food blender, and someone asked the other day, what brand of powdered oats do you buy? I've bought them before from My Protein when I was younger, but I've become a bit more clever with money now as I get older, and the electricity bills, etc., are going up. So I just buy standard oats from the shop, like a pack of whole organic oats from Aldi, or somewhere cheap, decent quality oats though, and chuck what I need in the Ninja food blender, whiz them up for 10 seconds, and it just turns them into total powder. So that's fine. I generally have about 40 to 50 grams of either the cream of rice or the oats in the drink, and then when I get back I have about another 40 grams of the powdered oats in my eggs that I eat, so that's about half an hour later. So I am in general getting that 80-90 grams, because I know it's medically, in these medical studies it's proven, and it's one of the only things that's got a vast amount of positive studies behind it, so there is no doubt that it pays to consume carbs after workout. And then what I mentioned about the protein, it's pretty gross to drink just water and carbs after workout, so sticking the protein powder in there, it just makes it taste a hell of a lot nicer. It's actually a pleasant drink if you find some proteins that you like. An example I got here, Diet Whey. Again, I bought that on a offer because it just happened to be a good price on Amazon. I do use these guys quite often, Protein Works. I found that they taste really, really good. They're probably my favourite tasting of proteins. They have quite a few offers on, and when they have an offer I generally buy anything from them that I need and then try and wait for the next round of offers, because like a lot of whey protein companies, the stuff is generally quite expensive when it's outside of the offer. So I don't like paying double the amount for it. I would rather just wait, and things like Black Friday and stuff, you can get some really good deals from them. So it's worth keeping an eye out. And then the other thing that people take post-workout is generally vitamin supplements. And this really interested me. This one was one of the ones that I thought, well, of course there's going to be loads of positive information about vitamin supplements out there. Funnily enough, vitamin supplements in these medical studies for people that train were, the studies showed that they had pretty much zero benefit for people that live in countries where they're getting generally a good diet, an average or above diet, that we're not malnourished, that we're reasonably active people with no significant health issues. If that's you, then you're literally throwing money down the drain with vitamins. And exactly the same findings for things like fish oil, which I do actually take, and I was kind of disappointed to see that, because that's one of those things that I just thought, well, everyone knows that's healthy, you don't have to look it up. Very few studies showing that it has any great benefit, certainly in athletic terms, and even in medical terms. You think, well, it wards off cancer or it wards off dementia. There were a few studies that showed that, but then there was a whole bunch of studies that showed that it didn't, and there's certainly not enough conclusive evidence from any of those studies put together to say yes, it helps with this. That doesn't exist, and this has been studied for a long time, and the studies have been extensive. So that's kind of disappointing. With that in mind, I probably won't bother supplementing with the vitamins, and a lot of the whey drinks and stuff have some vitamin supplements thrown in. So I'm thinking, why would I keep wasting money on them if there's no significant benefit to be had? And I know a lot of people will be kind of mad about that, and they like their animal pack vitamins and whatever, and I can't stand those animal ones because they're absolutely massive and they nearly choke you to death getting them down. And that's feeding back into that psychology of vitamins are good, so if you take a really big vitamin that's got loads of vitamin in it, it's going to be double good. And that's not how vitamin supplementation works. Even if the studies showed that supplementing with vitamins was beneficial, we certainly know that over supplementing with them does nothing good. It either just gets chucked out of the body, or it's actually causing stress to the body while we're trying. Well, there's a brief overview of the supplement world. It pays to be very careful. Take a look into what you're buying. A lot of these supplements are very expensive, beware of proprietary blends, beware of claims of multiple studies that work with these supplements. There are generally no supplements that build muscle tissue. You know, if they're claiming that they're going to put inches on you and they're going to give you loads of extra testosterone, they're either steroids in disguise or they're just talking rubbish. You know, there's no such thing. Guys, if you're taking those things, you know, and you're young guys and you're thinking you're going to go out on Friday night and your arms are going to be bigger, they're not. But if you actually believe that, you might go and really put some hard work in at the gym. So I can't knock it too much. You know, if it's getting people to do really good hard work, then fair enough. But what you could do is arm yourself with this knowledge and just go to the gym and know that the way to get big arms is to do really hard work in the gym and just make yourself do that anyway. Put some cool music on and just smash it in the gym and really go for it. You don't need to like trick yourself with expensive supplements. Save that money for going when you go out and having a nice time and having a meal, or putting some savings together and buying a house, whatever. You don't need to be wasting that on a load of pointless sups. Make sure you get your protein and carbs. Definitely throw some caffeine in there. That's nice and cheap anyway. And it definitely would be, you know, not bad to throw creatine in. I don't think it's as significant as people talk about it being, but it's certainly worth chucking in there if some of the studies show that it's had a positive benefit. I hope that helps you somewhat, guys. I'm off to SHOT Show next week in Vegas, but I am going to be throwing out some video from there. That's to do with my work in the defence industry. So if you're into the defence industry stuff that I do and any of the EDC stuff, tune in. There'll be loads of stuff coming out of Vegas. I'm going to train in Vegas, so I might try and put out a couple of training videos like English guy confused in an American gym or whatever. I'll have to play it by ear and see how it goes. I'll go with a colleague, and I don't think he is you know, too keen on the training bit, but we'll see what we do. Anyway, really, again, thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. I'm a small channel. Every subscription really helps me. I'm trying to just chuck as much honest information out your way as possible. I'm sorry about the adverts. I know, but that's the only way I've got of, you know, paying for the lighting rig and stuff. So sorry about that, but thanks a lot for watching. Take care. See you next time. Bye.